Hi, this is Merrill Needham, and today is New Year's Eve 2022, and welcome to the special year-end edition of Between Two Guitars, where I count down my top 11 best rock records of the year. I want to start by apologizing for not putting anything up in a while. Life, unfortunately, tended to get in the way, but everything's good to go. I'm happy, healthy, and here, and we are in my office today since all the Christmas decorations are still up in the living room, and it just felt a little better to do it in here. So that's why the change of scenery. The future episodes will go back to my old set. Anyway, without further ado, I want to talk about this year's best of 2022. There are a lot of really good records that came out, and unfortunately, not every one that I would want to put in the countdown got put in. There were that many good records. Plus, unfortunately, I just wasn't able to get my hands on everything I wanted to on vinyl. So I want to start by giving honorable mentions to the new record from Alter Bridge, Pawns and Kings, which was just released about a month or two ago. It's fantastic. I've only heard it on streaming services, so since I haven't given it a vinyl spin yet, it could be considered. The same with the new album, Divisive from Disturbed. What I've heard of that, they're kind of back to their old school sound, which means they have one song, which means you're going to love them or hate them. Hey, the album's divisive. What do you think? But those are going to be my honorable mentions. They didn't make it into the countdown. I'm not going to say whether they would have made it anyway, because that wouldn't be fair to the ones that made it in. However, with the 11 that I've chosen, there's some stuff in here that is just absolutely fantastic that may stay in regular rotation for years to come. And there's a really good mix of new artists, newer artists, and then some that just came out of nowhere and gave us either one of the best albums of their career or, in a couple of cases, their best album in decades. So, thanks for joining. If you like the content here, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe or hit that bell icon. This will eventually start to help me grow the show so I can maybe afford to build a better set behind me. Also, once we get to 100 subscribers, we're not there yet, I still have a copy of Rush's Moving Pictures on vinyl, the new remaster that we're willing to give away once we get to that point. So please like and subscribe if you like it, and we'll try to get a lot more shows in the new year. So without further ado, let's go to the top 11. And at number 11, we have the newest album from California rockers Korn. The album is called Requiem. This is their follow-up to 2018's The Nothing, which was one of my favorite albums of their entire career. For those that don't know, prior to the recording of that album, Jonathan Davis's ex-wife and mother to his children sadly passed away due to a drug overdose. And this was happening just as they were writing music, and Jonathan was getting ready to start to write lyrics for what became The Nothing. The Nothing ended up becoming somewhat of a concept album, which went through Jonathan Davis's feelings, how he processed the loss of his ex-wife, how he dealt with his children throughout this, and how he was really able to stay clean and sober through this. But what came out of that is, and then with the pandemic, probably a lot less of a tolerance on Jonathan Davis's side and some of the other bandmates for excessive drinking and drugging. Now, we're not sure that is why Fieldy has not been part of Korn's tour. We're not sure that's why he's not on any of the cover art or listed even as a band member anymore on the album. He did record all the bass parts on the album, so when you listen to it, Fieldy's on there. But I don't know what's going to happen. The fact that his side project, Stillwell, is in the midst of recording a new record, and it's either coming out or has just come out, that maybe kind of tells me that, Fieldy may not be coming back. Maybe they just can't see eye to eye on how he's choosing to live his life. We do know, and he's admitted to kind of going back to some of that. To what degree? I can just say that Jonathan Davis just from what I know of the situation, probably, again, doesn't want to go through something like that again, especially after, we lost Joey Jordison just last year in 2021, and those bands knew each other. So I just hope whatever goes on with that band, if Fieldy is hurting, hopefully he's getting better. Hopefully he can work his way back to Korn, because they're a much better band with them. But onto the record Requiem. It's a good album. It's the 11th album. It's number 11 on my countdown. Songs like Start the Healing, the opener Forgotten, and Hopeless and Beaten. There's some really good songs on there. But throughout the album, it's a little bit of a different sounding Korn. These guys are in their late 40s, early 50s at this point. And, as we get older, we're not going to play the same kind of music. I mean, not everybody can be AC/DC doing the same thing over and over again and it's sounding cool. Korn's had to kind of grow and change throughout their career, like so many bands have. And I think they did a really good job. Now, I don't like this album as much as The Nothing. That's not to say I don't like the album. I love it. It's just not as good as their last one. When you figure everything that was going on, this album was largely written and recorded during the pandemic. And Fieldy is kind of, what's going on with Fieldy is happening during this at the same time. So that probably played into it. Anyway, kind of a letdown for me as far as Korn goes. But at the same time, it's still a fantastic record. I still play it all the time. Even though it was an early year release, and it's definitely got some music that I would love to see them play live when they make it this way, hopefully this coming summer. Anyway, number 11, Requiem from Korn. Now on to number 10, we've got another band that followed up an album that came out in 2018 that I thought was, or 2019, I'm sorry, I thought was one of the best of their career. And that's Slipknot. And which leads me to number 10, which is The End So Far from Slipknot. This is probably the first one on my countdown that might get some head scratchers. Largely online, this album is not getting a lot of love from Slipknot fans. Reason being, the first song, Adderall, sounds absolutely nothing like Slipknot. It sounds like Pink Floyd. I mean, it really does. And some of the keyboard stuff sounds almost exactly like that opening keyboard riff from the opener to Obscured by Clouds, which is the album immediately after Metal and before Dark Side of the Moon for you casual Pink Floyd fans. Great album, by the way, if you haven't heard it in a while or haven't heard it yet. But you don't want to or normally think about hearing comparisons between Pink Floyd and Slipknot. Slipknot is about as far from Pink Floyd as a band that you can think of. But this song, Adderall, that's how that song starts. There's some reasons for it. There's some big departures on this album. They were dealing with a lot of shit. Former bandmate Joey Jordison died in 2021. During the pandemic, guitarist Jim Root, who had been one of the major writers of the last couple records since Paul's death and Joey's ouster for the band, hardly wrote anything. He's actually been outspoken of the fact that he didn't even think this record sounded much like a Slipknot record. But then he said that he didn't contribute much. He went through his own demons during the pandemic, but thankfully he was able to kind of get over it. That all being said, I like the song Adderall. I like the music on this album. I think Chapeltown Rag, which was their first single, and Dying Song, which is the song immediately after Adderall, are two of the heaviest, best Slipknot songs in a long time. Hive Mind is another kind of interesting song there, but I actually love it. In fact, every time I play this album, I like it a little more. Now, this is number 10. And I don't think if I play it anymore, it'll go up any higher. There's just some really, really good music that's been put out this past year. But I think this album may be one when it comes to Slipknot records that I may start to grab a little more often, especially since I am a little older. Remember also, these guys are in their 50s. And also, Clown lost his daughter during this whole thing. So you're going to get a different sounding record from Slipknot. I can tell you, every time I've heard it, I've liked it a little better. It is no longer my least favorite Slipknot album. So be that as you may, I think it's number 10. Definitely give it a shot. If you don't like it at first, listen to it a few more times. It'll grow on you. Open your minds, people. It's still Slipknot. Number 10, The End So Far. At number 9, and this is actually going to be fun, is going to be the first of 2 albums on the countdown from this band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And now here's a band that I had written off completely. When Stadium Arcadium was put out, I thought it was a phenomenal record. I have it on vinyl. I figured it was going to be it for them. It was a 2-record set. There was damn near 40 songs on it. Everything was phenomenal. Some of John Frusciante's best playing. And I thought it was a great way for the Chili Peppers to end their career. Do like a massive farewell tour. And then kind of go off into the sunset. They didn't do that. Well, John Frusciante did. He quit the band. They replaced him. And I'm sorry, the guitar player's name has slipped my mind. Like I said, I wrote the band off. The first album, they released 2 albums without Frusciante. The first one I listened to once on Apple Music, and that was pretty much it. It just didn't sound to me like the Chili Peppers. Either of those 2 albums they put out between Stadium Arcadium and now. Well, right before the pandemic, they got John Frusciante back. The Chili Peppers realized that for them to be at their best, their classic lineup, their classic sound, is Anthony Kiedis and Flea, the 2 original members, drummer Chad Smith, who also is going to appear 3 times in this countdown, and John Frusciante. Now, he was not the original guitar player. Hillel Slovak has that title. He'll always have a special place in the hearts of any longtime Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, but you know what? Their best music is with John Frusciante at guitar and Rick Rubin producing. Even though Dave Navarro is one of my favorite guitarists of all time, that album, One Hot Minute, didn't sound like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And everybody knew, and that's one of the reasons they were able to, thankfully Frusciante didn't die during that period, and they were to get him back because they had that period of Californication, By the Way, and Stadium Arcadium, which, some of their best music. And now, with him back, they dropped not 1 but 2 albums, so the same amount of music in Stadium Arcadium, but instead of releasing it as 1 collection, they released it as 2. This is the second of the 2, Return to the Dream Canteen. It's the album that songs aren't quite as strong on this one as the one that I'm going to show next, Unlimited Love. Think of this as the reload to Unlimited Love's load. Still great music. The songs all kind of tied together. You could tell that they were recorded on the same time. It's just that the songs on Unlimited Love, I think, are a little better. That's why one of the reasons it got the Grammy nomination. But this thing starts out friggin' awesome. Tip of my tongue is just that standard Red Hot Chili Peppers kind of funk, rock, punk, a little bit of go-go in there. That you can just tell it's them. They even name drop Funky Monks in this. That's a little something that we're going to see a little more often in the countdown as well, where you've got some of these older artists reflecting on some of their earlier work in the newer stuff. Kind of like what Bon Jovi did in My Life years ago. And there's a little link there, but I don't want to give too much away. Some other really good songs on here. It seems like the side starters are all really good, funky songs. Fake as Fuck starts side B, and it's just one of this, you'll be on the floor. Afterlife is my favorite song on this album, and just listen to the lyrics. Anthony Kiedis is he does a lot of reflection throughout his career. Some of the best songs have been reflecting on things that are going on in his life, good, bad, and otherwise. And Afterlife is Anthony and the rest of the band reflecting on the fact that in their 60s now, they're still going strong. They're, after everything that they did, everything that happened, man, not only they're strong, but they're playing stadiums. He knows that his time may be shorter, but as he says in the song, the afterlife knows where to find me. Great song. Also on this, that's a great song as well, is the song Eddie, which is their tribute to Eddie Van Halen. The song sounds nothing like a Van Halen tune, which I think is awesome, even though John Frusciante's maybe one of the greatest guitar solos ever ends the track. It's just a John Frusciante guitar solo, not John Frusciante trying to be Eddie Van Halen. It's John Frusciante trying to be Jimi Hendrix, which he's been trying to do his whole career and doing a pretty damn good job of it, along with some other stuff. But that's kind of what the solo sounds like to me. How is it a tribute? What does Anthony Kiedis do with his lyrics? He's a storyteller. He talks about the people he knows and loves. He talks about the things that they did together, or the scene, or what happened. And that's what he did. He kind of told the story of the professional life of Eddie Van Halen in this song. And I think it's a really, really fitting tribute. And it's a song that I listen to over and over again. And one of the reasons why this album made number 9 in the countdown. Return to the Dream Canteen. It's basically available. You can pick them up at Barnes & Noble. Pretty much everywhere they've got a few copies of this. So check it out. 17 really good Red Hot Chili Peppers songs. Frusciante's in the band. It sounds like them. If you liked the albums from Mother's Milk through Stadium Arcadium, with the exception of One Hot Minute, you're going to love this. At number 9, Return to the Dream Canteen, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now at number 8, more Red Hot Chili Peppers. This one, Unlimited Love, is the first of the 2 albums that came out in 2022. This includes the Grammy-nominated song Black Summer. I love the song. Yeah, Anthony Kiedis is doing a little something with his voice that takes a little bit, but it does kind of fit in the song. Other good songs on here, tracks like Aquatic Mouth Kiss. Bastards of Light is a little interesting. Listen to the song and then listen to the chorus and kind of how they borrowed something that Roy Orbison sang shortly before he died. I don't want to give too much away, but again, another, two records here, 17 songs. They're all great Red Hot Chili Peppers tunes. Man, you get Frusciante, Smith, Kiedis, and Flea in a room with Rick Rubin. What you're going to get is great music. These are albums that are not just an excuse to tour, like so many quote-unquote legacy artists are doing. And trust me, they could do it and nobody would think twice about them. They're playing stadiums now, and they're doing well. But you know what? Unlike some of these other stadium-level bands, they put out an album, they put out 2 records that tell me they still want to do this for a living, and they still want to generate more fans, and they still want to put out music that people want to listen to. And this Chili Peppers fan is happy to have 2 records from them in the countdown this year, because I get to listen to them for the rest of my life. At number 8, Unlimited Love, Red Hot Chili Peppers. You can get these, find them at Walmart. You can find them at Target. You can find them at Barnes & Noble and on Amazon. Grab it, listen to it. You're going to love it. Now at number 7, this is another really good one. They just keep getting better here, folks. Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, number 4. So this is the fourth album of this band, and it's also the first album from the new Gibson records. So yes, Gibson guitars, Gibson USA, that make my Les Paul and my SG now also have their own record label. Now, they haven't done a lot with it yet, and it makes sense that Slash is going to be the first one to do it because he's their number one brand ambassador. At any given time, there's probably 3 or 4 different Slash models that you can buy. Gibson, plus more on the Epiphone side, acoustic and electric. There's a lot of great stuff out there. He has done an awful lot to keep Gibson really at the forefront for the last 20, 30 years, going back to when he was one of the only guitarists to play a Les Paul, when everybody else was playing Strats. Yeah, I tend to be a little biased. But this album, first being one that's put out by Gibson Records, and although it's the only major release they have, I really hope they do more, because I think that they can really do well putting out some records by keeping some artists known and putting out some good music by some bands that'll sell guitars. And I tell you, there's a lot of really good bands out there still that are making great music, both young and old, that I think Gibson would really be good to kind of take a look at. Because I think with your money behind you, and with the fact that some of these artists could also sell guitars, let's see in the next couple years, let's see some more releases, because this is a damn good one. Now, the first thing I really like about this is that they recorded this thing old school, where instead of, and even during the pandemic they did this, instead of everybody recording their own parts in their own house or their own home studio and then having some producer kind of clip it together, they all go down to Nashville back last year and recorded this at RCA Studio B, that big old room that so many other great records were made over the decades from the 50s all down. They got together, they set up as if they were playing live, and they played all of these songs, and that's how they recorded it. They recorded this as a live band. And the thing that was even cooler is that Myles Kennedy had fucking COVID during this whole thing, and he said he could barely even breathe. How he was able to hit the notes he hit, how he was able to do as well as he did, and at the same time, the fact that the rest of the bandmates were willing to kind of be close to him during this whole thing. And they come out with songs like The River Is Rising, which was the first song off of the album. I was talking to one of my son Jordan's friends early in the year, 20-year-old kid, who said that that song was like their favorite song of all time. So if kids are really liking Slash's new music now, hey, that tells me something. Call Off the Dogs is another really good one. April Fools. C'est La Vie. I mean, it's standard, what you could expect. It's not my favorite of the 4 albums from them, but at the same time, I like every song better than what Guns N' Roses released last year. And I still like this better than everything on Chinese Democracy. So, be that as it may, this is a good band. And if you get a chance to see them live, I'll tell you, they don't play any Guns N' Roses songs live anymore. They don't have to. They also don't play any Alter Bridge songs either. They don't have to anymore. They did, but on this last tour, hell, they've got 4 albums of music. They're playing clubs, so they can play 2 hours. You want to see Slash play Guns N' Roses songs? You pay $400, you go see them in a stadium. Myself, I'd rather go see this band, and I've seen them play clubs. I've seen them, as I saw this band at Download as lead support to Def Leppard. So they're playing in front of 20, 30,000 fans and sound just as good. For my money, Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and Conspirators is one of the best live acts on the circuit. I'll go see them before I see Slash's other band. Besides, it's a lot cheaper. Anyway, number 7, Slash 4. If you like what Slash has put out before, if you like Guns N' Roses, if you like Velvet Revolver, if you like Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators, you're going to like this record. It's number 7 of the year. Go ahead and get it. There are copies. You can actually get copies at Guitar Center, believe it or not, which, hey, Gibson Records, that's kind of the one place that I found this out in the wild lately, and they've got a few copies at the one here in Charlotte. So, Slash featuring Myles Kennedy, The Conspirators, number 4. Oh, you also get this album, would have got this album if you bought the limited edition Slash 4 Gibson Les Paul, which sold out same day, but that came with the record. Anyway, get it. Number 7, Slash featuring Myles Kennedy, The Conspirators. Now on to number 6 is an album that they had been sitting on for over a year, but couldn't release because they wanted to have vinyl. In fact, the album came out, Clutch, Sunrise on Slaughter Beach is the album. I saw them on tour playing a couple songs of this going back to like April or May. And Neil Fallon was saying, hey man, our album's been done for almost a year. We just can't get the vinyl pressed. And we want to play more songs from it, but hopefully we'll get it soon. They finally did get it out towards the end of the year. And another solid effort from Clutch. Sunrise on Slaughter Beach is the name of the album. The lead single, Red Alert Boss Metal Zone, is just another kind of tongue-in-cheek conspiracy theory type of track that Clutch is known for. The thing behind this, and this is really cool if you haven't heard about it, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this big conspiracy that whoever put this thing out had put electronic circuitry into the virus. And if you were catching this, you were having electronic circuitry in your body. And somebody said that they had figured it out, and they published these schematics online. And it really started to get some traction in the conspiracy theory community until somebody pointed out that what this guy had posted were the schematics of the Boss Metal Zone guitar pedal. For people that don't know what a guitar pedal is, they are things like this that will help change the sound of your guitar. The Boss Metal Zone was something that came out in the 80s. It was a cheap pedal with some interesting effects and has been rather maligned in the guitar community, which is kind of funny there. Neil Fallon, this kind of thing kind of fits in with what he writes about. So he writes a song about this, and it's one of Clutch's best songs ever. The album goes right into the title track, Sunrise on Slaughter Beach, kind of a slow, doomy track. This album isn't quite as funky as some of Clutch's earlier records. I tend to think of Clutch as just as much of a go-go band as they are a rock band. Those of you not from the DC area may not know what I'm talking about. Check out bands like Rare Essence, Trouble Funk, EU, Lil Benny and the Masters. These are all the bands that Clutch walks up to. So if you're wondering what that music is, it's a style of music from DC. It's called go-go, rooted in funk. The joke has always been it's entire genre of music that's based on live P-Funk shows. And that's pretty close, but it's definitely from DC. If you haven't had a chance to listen to the music, I tend to prefer it to most hip-hop. So anyway, but this is a rock show. I'm getting kind of off topic here, but not really, because Clutch's music has always been rooted in go-go. They're from Germantown, Maryland. They listen to that music just as much as they did hardcore bands like Minor Threat and Fugazi, as well as listening to what was played on DC 101, and that's what Clutch is. It's kind of a mixture of all of that together. It could only come from the DC area. The DC area. Anyway, other really good songs. I mean, Skeletons on Mars, We Slide for Excellence. Nosferatu Madre is one of my favorite songs on this track too. Just this song about a vampire that's taken revenge. I love it. But that's Clutch for you. It would probably be higher on the countdown if it wasn't for the fact that my top 5 that's coming after this are just really fantastic. If you're a Clutch fan, you're going to love this. If you've never heard Clutch before, this is kind of an album you might want to start here with, because it's maybe a little more accessible than Robot Hive Exodus was. Or or their debut, or Book of Bad Decisions, or one of these many other albums that they have that I absolutely love. If you haven't listened to Clutch before, don't waste your time. Go straight to it. If you haven't heard this record, go ahead and listen to it. If you're on the fence about it, go ahead and order it. You can get it on Amazon.com. Weathermaker Records, it's their own label. They've been doing this long enough, but you can pretty easily get it on Amazon right now. Sunrise on Slaughter Beach from Clutch, number 6 of 2022. Now we go to number 5, is a band that a lot of you watching here in the States may not have heard of. It's the new album from Porcupine Tree. Porcupine Tree has been a band that came out in the early 1990s as a one-off project from band leader Steven Wilson. It got a hell of a lot more popular than he thought it was going to be. So then eventually it became a band, and they put out some great albums through the 90s and early 2000s. They're a prog band. Their sound, they're descendants of all of those bands from the 70s, Pink Floyd, Yes, Genesis. Very heavy on the Pink Floyd with the electronic music, but you can hear a lot of Yes in their music, a lot of Genesis. Steven had done some, in the early part of the 2000s, had started to do also some work with the guys in Opeth, so you could get some prog metal in there. They just never caught on in the United States. For some reason, Radiohead did. I always thought Porcupine Tree was a little more accessible. A lot of the songwriting and the lyrics, you get a lot of Lennon and McCartney in there. I mean, this is a fantastic band. I actually wasn't turned on to them until the pandemic. After Eddie Van Halen died, there was a little Twitter back and forth between Steven Wilson and Wolfgang Van Halen. They were trying to start some kind of garbage because Steven Wilson had said that Eddie Van Halen was never one of his influences. He meant to be very respectful the whole time, but you know how the clickbait advertisements work. Wolfgang Van Halen got upset. He made a comment. Wilson apologized. They actually became friends. As a result, I decided to actually give Porcupine Tree a try. I'd never listened to them. The first record was Lightbulb Sun. I fell in love with it. I now own 9 of their records. And I tell you, if you haven't started listening to Porcupine Tree, if you like Pink Floyd, if you like Radiohead, if you like Tool, if you like Opeth, Yes, Genesis, you're going to find something in Porcupine Tree you're going to like. Well, they broke up in the mid-2000s, so they haven't put up anything in over a decade. Steven Wilson had been kind of doing his own thing. Released a few solo albums that just didn't get the same amount of coverage. Good stuff, but I prefer the Porcupine Tree stuff better myself. He was also at that time doing a lot of remixing and remastering of some classic rock albums and gotten some awards for it. One, if you hadn't get a chance, the new reissue that came out a few years ago of King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King was done by Steven Wilson, and it was just amazing. So check that out if you get a chance. Well, realizing that his fans really didn't care as much about the solo stuff as they did about Porcupine Tree, he puts the band back together, albeit it's a 3-piece now instead of a 4-piece. I don't know the names of all the band members yet. Again, this is a band that I'm still relatively new to within the last couple of years. The new album is called Closure Continuation, and it was released, with almost no warning, towards the end of 2021. Porcupine Tree announced, hey, we're back together. We got a new record. Here's the first song, Harridan. Hope you like it. And we did. Their songs, this album is really aptly titled because there's some songs that feel like they could fit on, their albums like Stupid Dream, Lightbulb Sun, In Absentia. There's some of the heavier stuff that you found in albums like The Incident, Deadwing, In Absentia, and Fear of a Blank Planet. And then there's some other stuff even that kind of harkens back to really older albums like Signify. and Up the Downstair. This is an album that not only Porcupine Tree fans are going to love, but it's a very, very well done album. This isn't him trying to recapture past glory. You know, Steven Wilson, I think he's only in his 40s or 50s still anyway, so he's by no means ready to become a legacy artist yet. This tells me that whatever ended Porcupine Tree may be done. They're saying that there's going to be more. They're on tour right now. If you have a chance, go see them. This is the 5th best album of the year, in my opinion, beating out a lot of really good stuff from some bands that I've known and loved for a lot longer. If you haven't heard of Porcupine Tree, check them out. This is a great album to listen to if you're a fan. If you weren't aware that they had come back and you hadn't gotten around to listen to it, this album is that good. Again, Porcupine Tree, Closure Continuation, number 5 of 2022. Fantastic album. Now for the top 4. And number 4 really shocked me. In fact, I was not a first day, first week, or even first month buyer of this album simply because virtually everything that he's put out since 1991 has been hot garbage. And with the exception of one album put out in 1991 and a couple of songs here and there, pretty much everything he's put out since 1981 has been a lot of hot garbage. Although Ozzy Osbourne is and has been one of my favorite vocalists of all time. The work that he did in Black Sabbath, well, their first 4 albums anyway, and his solo work, but face it, the first 2, and then some scattered tracks from Bark at the Moon through Ultimate Sin, and then No More Tears. Really, other than the first 2 albums and No More Tears, that's really all the solo Ozzy you need to listen to. Most of his concerts over the last 20 years have really come from those 3 albums anyway, and then the smattering of Black Sabbath songs that everybody has to hear. Most of what you would get on albums like Bark at the Moon, other than the title track, were pretty much forgettable. The Ultimate Sin, although because that album came out, I got to see Metallica for the first time, other than Shot at the Dark, you know, they're not great they're not great songs. It's almost like Ozzy's been just going through the motions. Sharon tells him to make a record, so they go make a record. There's different players for every album, and you go from having somebody like Zakk Wylde as your guitar player to now you've got some guy named Gus G. Although Gus G is a great guitar player, he's not the type of guitar player that is going to help you sell millions of records in the United States. And that's one of the reasons why albums like Black Rain just, no. And then a couple years ago, he puts out this album that's produced by a pop producer named Andrew Watt. I think it was called Ordinary World or Ordinary Man or something. I listened to some of the songs on it, and it just makes me, that album made me think that Ozzy was a victim of elder abuse. This guy, Andrew Watt, decided that it would be a good thing to have him record with Post Malone. I mean, what are you thinking? The song with Elton John, it's like, okay, it was cute, but this isn't Ozzy. These aren't songs I'm going to listen to. I mean, he had some good musicians. I mean, Chad Smith was playing drums and Duff McKagan was playing bass on most of it. But it seemed like this guy, this guy was a pop producer, and he's like, I'm just going to make Ozzy a pop star. We're going to get the best musicians on earth, and we're going to put him with, Elton John and Post Malone, and all these Post Malone fans and Elton John fans are going to flock to it. And okay, they streamed the song, but nobody bought the album. In fact, there's a copy of this album. I'll probably buy it eventually just for completionist purposes. But there's one copy of this album that's been sitting at the Barnes & Noble over at the Arboretum since it came out. It's the exact same copy. They haven't sold it. They haven't, and I've even asked, I said, no, it's there. We haven't ordered another copy, and it's that same one. So I myself have gone in that record store almost every week for a couple of years and have had it in my hands and decided not to buy it. And a lot of other people have too. That's how bad that album was. So when all of a sudden Patient Number 9 shows up in Walmart and shows up in Barnes & Noble and people are starting to say some good things about it, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Here's what Andrew Watt did. And this was really, really smart. He still did this. He still did Patient Number 9, the number 4 album, like a pop album, right? It's the same theme, really, that Quincy Jones did with Thriller. You get some of the best musicians in the world, okay? In this case, what he did is he got Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He got Duff McKagan, did a couple songs, but Rob Trujillo mainly was the bass player. Taylor Hawkins did a couple of tracks before he passed when Chad was having to honor his commitments recording with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So while Chad Smith is recording all this great music with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, he's in the studio writing music with Andrew Watt and Rob Trujillo. Now, this time what Andrew Watt did is he learned his lesson. Now, he's still doing the pop thing by getting a lot of guest musicians, but what he did is he decided to bring in guests that make sense. Guys like Zakk Wylde, who plays on 3 songs. Some of the best Ozzy music since Randy had died has been with Zakk Wylde. But then he also got a couple other guitar players, some that you may not think of, but they're guitar players, and all guitar players that were either contemporaries or have been influenced by Ozzy in some way or another. The vinyl starts out with a song called Immortal. The CD and streaming starts out with the title track Patient Number 9, but since we're doing vinyl, we're going to talk about Immortal. Mike McCready from Pearl Jam is the guitar player. Go figure. Well, you know what? It's not surprising. McCready has been vocal about how big an influence Black Sabbath was on Pearl Jam and on his guitar playing. You look at a lot of the early 90s grunge and the late 80s, early 90s stuff that he was doing with Green River. You can hear the Black Sabbath in there, so it makes sense. And Andrew Watt, the song is just like, wait a minute, this was immediately one of the best songs that I've heard from Ozzy since No More Tears. I'm like, I like this. Then Patient Number 9. Patient Number 9 has Jeff Beck playing a solo. Jeff fucking Beck. One of Tony Iommi's contemporaries, basically. A guy that was there really before him, going all the way back to the Yardbirds. And a guy that can play just about anything. And you know, one thing about Jeff Beck, and it makes really sense, a lot of sense to have him on this album. And he has a second, there's a second track on it that has escaped me, but because Jeff Beck can adjust his style to fit whoever he's playing with. And that's what makes Jeff Beck one of the greatest guitar players on earth. And the song Patient Number 9, whoever wrote this song, whoever wrote the lyrics, I'm pretty sure Ozzy wrote the melody, but the lyrics were exactly what you would expect out of Ozzy at this point in his life. The tune is great. The guitar playing is amazing. I can't get the song out of my head. This is a song that I'm going to learn how to play. In fact, I'm hopefully within a year, I'll have this whole album down. This is how good this album is. But it ain't just Jeff Beck and Mike McCready. Fucking Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton plays on this album. The song called One of Those Days. It's on side 2. It's the second track on side 2. and it has some of Eric Clapton's best rock playing since his Cream days. Oh my God, I didn't think Eric Clapton had it in him. First of all, I think it was really cool the way they wrote the song. Is it sounds like an Ozzy song, and it's a really good Ozzy song, but the chord structure was written as if Eric Clapton was writing it. Now, Eric Clapton is not credited as one of the songwriters. This Andrew Watt and Chad Smith and Rob Trujillo wrote it. And they had the song pretty much done. Eric Clapton comes in and he played over top of the whole thing. And this is Eric Clapton playing like he played when he played Gibsons. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was playing Gibsons when he did this. I don't know for certain, but man, one of these days is an amazing song. And just me having been a Clapton fan as long as I've been an Ozzy fan, hell, maybe even longer. But for different reasons, Eric Clapton and Ozzy together fits a lot more than Ozzy and Elton John do. But wait, there's more. Degradation Blues, which is the lead to, no, not Degradation Blues, Degradation Rules, I'm sorry, is the lead off to side 4, is one of 2 songs that Tony Iommi played on. And it sounds like it'd fit right on Master Reality. Now, Iommi didn't have a hand in writing. The track that he did was the song called No Escape From Now, which leads off side 2. Iommi actually helped write that song, and it's just a phenomenal, heavy, Sabbathy, doomy. Those 2 songs, hell, those are the best Black Sabbath songs since Master Reality. And Degradation Rules, Ozzy brings the heart back up, so it kind of echoes back to The Wizard. That song had that real Master Reality vibe. It's been nominated for a Grammy. It deserves it. There's other great songs on here. You Don't Even Know My Name. God Only Knows, which is not a Beach Boys cover. I've just named pretty much all of them. These are just some great songs, one after another. This is a better album than No More Tears, front to back. This album, and I'm going to say this, whether you like it or not, whether you laugh at me or not, if you only own 3 Ozzy albums, you own Blizzard of Oz, you own Diary of a Madman, and you own this. The only way this album could have been even any better is if Randy Rhoads himself played on it, but unfortunately that can't happen. So yeah, this is the best Ozzy music. Well, Tony Iommi plays on it, so go figure. The best solo Ozzy that you don't hear Randy on by a long shot. And some of the stuff is every bit as good. If you haven't heard Patient Number 9 yet, you need to. If you haven't bought it yet, you need to. If you liked Ozzy, but like me and many others, you only gave a shit to hope that he toured and see who he brings out live, or you're happy that he's still alive, listen to this record. You'll be happy. At number 4, Patient Number 9, Ozzy Osbourne. Andrew Watt, you did a fantastic job, brother. You may have helped. You're not doing it all by your own, but you're helping to save rock and roll, my friend. Buy this record. Number 3, the new album from Ghost, Impera. Ghost is like one of my favorite bands right now, and this is the band that is at the top of their game. Them, Volbeat, and hopefully Avenged Sevenfold, when their new album comes out in spring, are going to be the bands that really lead the charge as your top-line festival headliners. I would expect to see Ghost headlining a lot of festivals this summer once all the rest of the Danny Wimmer stuff comes out. If we're not getting a lot of Danny Wimmer festivals this year still, I would expect Ghost to do a big tour next year. Tobias Forge has just kind of figured it out with that mix of Blue Oyster Cult type music. You've got the Sabbathy, doomy stuff in there, but not as much. Starting with Meliora and going through Prequel and into here, you're getting a lot of influence of actually late 20th century praise music. Yep, that's what I'm saying, is that a lot of the stuff that you would sing in kind of, I would say, a somewhat fundamentalist Christian church back in the 80s and 90s. Think of that type of music with those musical forms, but instead of praising Jesus, praising Satan. It's all tongue in cheek, people, but that's what it is lyrically. And the lyrics are phenomenal and they're hilarious. The lead single, Little Sunshine. All right, the song's called Little Sunshine. Call me Little Sunshine, call me Mephistopheles. This is their shtick. And Tobias doesn't take himself seriously. He's a new Papa Emeritus every time, and at the end of every tour cycle, they fire the old Papa Emeritus, they grab him, pull him off stage, he goes away for a while, and they bring the new one back, and it's still him behind the makeup, but doing something else. For the first couple albums, everything was a mystery. They were doing the Kiss Slipknot thing where nobody knew their names or who they were. It was either a bunch of nameless ghouls and Papa Emeritus, although Tobias Forge was doing all the interviews as a nameless ghoul. Until that all came out, he does all the writing, he does all the recording. This is pretty much a solo band like Alice Cooper or Marilyn Manson, with him being the focal point. But man, it's great rock and roll. Songs like Hunter's Moon and Spillways and Watcher in the Sky. I mean, it's just great poppy 70s flavor with some of the 80s big rock in there. And then you got Little Sunshine, which to me has one of the best rock riffs that's written by any guitarist in a long damn time. Go figure, you got a band that vocally praises Satan, even though it's tongue-in-cheek, and you can find this album in Target right now. If you haven't, maybe part of it is because, oh yeah, that's right, these guys are TikTok stars now. That their cover of Mary on a Cross has been making the rounds, I guess. I'm not on TikTok at all. Mary on a Cross is not on this album. There's a couple of EPs that they've released that has it. So if you're looking for Ghost for Mary on a Cross, it's not going to be on Impera. Buy it anyway. This is their best record yet. It's Ghost at their prime. Let's see how long it lasts. Every album, one after the other, I think has gotten a little better. And this took a big leap. It's the number 3 album, and it's beaten out a lot of really, really good stuff. If you haven't bought it yet, buy it. Ghost Impera, number 3. Now we go to number 2, and I can pretty much tell you is these top 2 albums are going to be in none of your countdowns, but I don't care. Maybe they would if you actually took a chance to listen to them up front. Maybe if you knew they exist. Number 2 is an album that, just like Ozzy at number 4, had no business being anywhere nearly as good as it is. The 80s hair metal bands that hang on, and there's a few of them, there's quite a few of them out there, and they're all making records. And they're all nowhere near as good as what they put out in the 80s. Most of them. I'm not going to name the band names here because I don't want to really insult anybody, because a lot of these bands are bands that I would pay to go see in concert right now, but their albums just aren't there. Their videos are kind of cringy because they're trying to be 20s and 30s. Not Skid Row. And I think it's kind of interesting because when Skid Row fired Sebastian Bach in '96, And after considering calling themselves Ozone Monday for a brief minute, they decided to go back using the Skid Row name, and they hired a guy named Johnny Solinger, which sounded nothing like Sebastian Bach. The music was completely different. Nobody really gave it a chance. I didn't like it as much. And Skid Row went from headlining arenas with Pantera's lead support at the middle of Slave to the Grind to basically playing state fairs and hoping to release an EP. And they had this like trilogy that they were working on called United World Rebellion. And you hear it was maybe coming out, maybe not coming out. It's just, they're touring. Nobody really cares. Everybody's asking them about Sebastian Bach. One interview after another with these guys, they're having to explain why they're never going to bring Sebastian Bach back in the band. But nobody likes your current singer. And although it is good music for what it is, and I would challenge anybody to really give the Solinger stuff a chance. It's just not what Skid Row was. So eventually they fired Johnny, and there were multiple reasons for it. And sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago. There's many reasons for that. It's too bad. It's just alcohol. That's all I'm going to say there. It's something that I've struggled with, and thankfully that I've put behind me a couple of years ago. But y'all, if you're struggling, it's time to stop. And Johnny Solinger unfortunately was a casualty as well, and too bad that he had to lose his spot in Skid Row even before it happened. So then they bring this guy Tony Harnell in, who was in TNT, and he maybe lasted a minute. They never really did anything with him. I think they went in and re-recorded I Remember You with him on vocals, and it's like, okay, whatever. And he was gone really within a couple months, and then they bring in ZP Third from Dragon Force. And my son and I actually saw Skid Row with ZP Third at Download in England back in 2019, and they sounded pretty damn good. In fact, I was commenting that I thought Skid Row sounded better than Sebastian Bach the last few times that I had seen him live. And I'll maintain that. I mean, ZP Third's voice is in a little bit better shape. And Sebastian Bach is who he is. And hey, I understand why they don't want him back in the band. And with ZP Third, here's a guy that they got along with. And they were starting to get some festival dates. But still at the same time, there's not much love for the new record. We hear it's coming. We hear it's going to be on Golden Robot, but so many other things were supposed to be on Golden Robot that never came out, like the John Sykes solo album that has been supposed to be coming out for about 4 or 5 years now. So 2 things happen early in the year. They switched from Golden Robot to Ear Music, and then in like March or April, right before, like weeks before they were supposed to open for the Scorpions at a Las Vegas residency, they fire lead singer ZP Third, and they hire 30-something Swedish singer Eric Grönwall. Eric Grönwall had previously been in a band called Heat, which is a really, really good, hard heavy metal band from Sweden. They now have their original vocalist back in the band, and they put out an album this year, which was in somebody else's top 20 that I saw. I don't know the name of the album up front, but just look up Heat. It's HEAT as an acronym. So with the things, check that album out, and we'll add that as another, honorable mention. So anyway, they bring this kid, Eric Grönwall, in, and one of the things they mentioned is this kid he had won Sweden Idol in 2009. And he had auditioned with the song 18 in Life. Skid Row had actually toured with Heat several years ago in Europe, and so they had seen this guy. And they had found out that right when they were getting in and starting to record what is going to become the new album, The Gang's All Here, they made the decision that, you know what, this ain't going to work with ZP Third. And I think they're right. The album would have been decent, I think, but it would have been one of those bands from hair metal bands that are still trying to remain relevant, that are hoping to basically get shows, but it probably wouldn't have been a record that people really care about. And with these bands, even that are making these records, you know, they don't play the new music. Well, Skid Row has been making a career out of doing things differently from the beginning. I mean, when you look at after hitting with their first record and songs like Youth Gone Wild and 18 in Life and I Remember You and Rattlesnake Shake, and these are all songs that everybody loved, and they had hit after hit. And then all of a sudden, with their next album, they decide they want to become a metal band. And they, although personally, Slave to the Grind was my favorite Skid Row album all these years, I'm a metal fan. A lot of the fans of the first album, it was just a little too heavy, and they went even farther with Subhuman Race. Well, with The Gang's All Here, they got a guy that can hit all of the notes that Sebastian Bach can better because he takes better care of himself physically. He doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink. He's also a cancer survivor, so that's another reason why he's a little healthier. And he's also younger. He's in his early 30s. I don't know his exact age, but he's at an age that it's not going to look creepy when he gets up on stage jumping around singing a song called What Do You Do? What are you going to do when the lights turn on? Okay. And then with these new songs, it seems like, and God, I mean, Sabo and Bolan were really smart, and Scotty Hill as well, the other original member of the band, were smart when they wrote these songs. Every song on this album has a sing-along chorus that's easy to remember. Songs like Resurrected and the first track, Hell or High Water, Time Bomb. All of these tracks, and some ones that I haven't mentioned, every one of them has a chorus that's easy to pick up and sing back to the band. Every one of them has a big guitar riff that you're going to remember instantly. It's like this music, and it makes sense because Rachel Bolan is a big music industry guy. He's done a lot of production, he's done band management, and he's worked with a lot of big artists over the last 20 years. So he understands what sells. And, you know, you get a little bit of that. This was an album that they took their time with. And every one of these songs is a great Skid Row song. It's got that storytelling quality that you would get from that first album, where kind of like contemporaries Bon Jovi, the songs like 18 in Life and Youth Gone Wild and I Remember You, these are stories that you can relate to as a listener. That when you're listening to these songs, you could put yourself in these songs and you can relate. That's one of the things that made Bon Jovi so popular for so many years and why they're still playing arenas. That's what made Skid Row so big, and if they could have kept their shit together in the early 90s, they could have been every bit as big as Bon Jovi. Now, with this album, they kind of go back. I would actually almost put this album almost as a bridge from their first album to Slave to the Grind. So there's some really heavy stuff on this. The song that ends track 1, Nowhere Fast, and even it's like that cool lyric that chorus you can remember, standing at the speed of sound. We're going nowhere fast. Just something easy thing to remember. But that song's about Anthrax heavy. I mean, there's some stuff here that's like almost thrash metal, but that New York thrash metal that Anthrax pioneered. So you've got that real heavy East Coast that Skid Row did a real great job at themselves in the 90s on Slave to the Grind and Subhuman Race. If you like that Skid Row, you're going to find it here. There's not an I Remember You on here. There's not an 18 in Life on here. There doesn't need to be. What there needed to be was a bunch of heavy hitters that they can play live that are going to get people singing back. So now they can play more songs from the new record and sell concert tickets. And this is, I think, an album that could actually sell in 2023 if you market it to people my age. As long as people know that Skid Row's out there, and Skid Row not only sounds like it did back in 89, but they're as good as they did back in 89. And they're number 2. The Gang's All Here. The one last song that I want to mention, October Song, is kind of the departure on here, where they kind of almost go into Dream Theater territory. You still have a sing-along chorus in here, but it's a song that it's like an 8-minute song, and it goes in a lot of different directions. There's time changes. Again, this is kind of like a Dream Theater almost inspired song. It's different than something that you've ever heard from Skid Row, and I think it's really, really good. Buy this record. You can find it on Amazon. There's plenty of stock. I'd love to see these guys main stage on a lot of festivals, or maybe doing their own headlining club tour this year. If you get a chance to see them live, I hope you do. This music is friggin' awesome at number 2. But now it's time for the number 1 album of the year. And like I said before, it's an album a lot of you maybe haven't heard of. And it's because sadly they didn't get put on a big tour for 2022 after the album came out in April. The band I'm talking about is Goodbye June. They're out of Nashville. They're a band that I've sung the praises of on this channel many times before. So it's probably not a surprise if you know me that I've talked about this band. What was surprising for me is when I heard it, this is their first album, is just how fucking good it is. From the opening track, Step Aside, which is one of the best Southern rock songs that I've heard in decades. Right to the last track on side 2, Black, there ain't a bit of filler on this album. Every song that they've put on this album, I think, is one of the best songs that they've ever done as a band. Their sound, if you take Southern, they're a modern Southern rock band. So there's elements of old school Southern rock, your Skynyrd, your Allman Brothers, your Marshall Tucker. In fact, singer Landon Milburn, the vocal qualities, he's actually kind of almost into like a Leslie West type of territory in some cases, but his own sound, and it's just amazing. The last track on side 1, What I Need, which is the ballad, really showcases Landon's vocals. Man, it's just an amazing vocalist, and what he's done from track from 1 to 3. Now, your guitar players, though, Tyler Baker and Brandon Quackenbush, are right now, in my opinion, 2 of the best Southern rock guitarists out on the circuit today. And their sound hasn't been tighter. They've added an element to their sound on this album where you can hear a lot of, like, I guess you could say AC/DC style riffs, which is true, and they're not the first band to do it, but they're the first band to do it that, to me, doesn't sound like they're trying to ape AC/DC. That they're playing some good, old-fashioned, overdriven power chords from humbucking pickups into a Marshall. Tyler Baker plays, although he started to play an SG a little bit on stage, he mainly plays an ES335 and a Red Firebird. In fact, he's one of the reasons why I'm going to hopefully get a Firebird sooner rather than later to add to my collection. But man, it's the song Three Chords is, in that vein, and but the lyrics there and what they sing about, you've got that's where the gospel influence comes in. That's where the country and western influence comes in. That's where the rhythm and blues. It's Goodbye June has a little bit of all of it. But instead of where they were their previous couple albums, where their sound kind of was maybe a little bit over the place, they would have their song that sounded like it fit into that Arcade Fire, Cage the Elephant territory. Then they had, the rocking tune, like what was the song off of their last album? Anyway, the Wind Blows. But it was more of a diverse sound that they seemed like they were trying to find. Again, they only had 2 albums and an EP. This is their 3rd full length. They found their sound here. And this is my #1 album of 2022. I put this ahead of Ozzy. I put this ahead of Ghost. I put this ahead of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Guys, this is how good this album is. And I thought it was when I first heard it back in April. Actually, the end of 2021, when the first singles started being released, I knew it was going to be good. I didn't know it was going to be this good. I didn't know that, songs like Breathe and Attack, which to me is probably the best song about how screwed up social media is that any band has tried. Stand and Deliver. This is their mission statement. This is who we are as a live band. And the 3 guys, along with touring bassist Jacob Thomas Jr. and drummer Kevin Smith, real tight touring rhythm section. They're great guys. Jacob Thomas has his own band, and there's plenty of music out there on Spotify and Apple Music. You definitely have to check his stuff out. Goodbye June is a band that hopefully will be touring quite a bit this year. Either hopefully they get on as an opening act on a real big tour, or maybe Earache will spend the money to put them in clubs throughout the South this spring and summer, because I think they could fill them. This is the best record of 2022. This is the best Southern rock album in a long time. And I don't want to say since, because I'll end up comparing to somebody's favorite artist or favorite album, and that usually doesn't go good. Let's just say this. If you've got more than one Southern rock album in your collection and you haven't heard Goodbye June yet, shame on you. If you like rock and roll and you haven't heard Goodbye June yet, shame on you. Put on this album right from track 1, Step Aside. Hell, go look at the video on YouTube. It's a great video. And listen to the entire record front to back. If after you've done that, if you don't love this album, then you don't love rock music. This is that good. Hope to God they get a good U.S. tour this year. They're already got a name over in the UK and in Europe. What's taken us so long? There you go. That's my top 11 of 2022. All of those records are available either through Amazon.com or out in the wild at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You also can find them at some of your local record stores. And I want to take a shout out right now to Noble Records in Matthews, North Carolina. If you can see the shirt here a little better there. They opened a few months before the pandemic started. Dylan is the owner. I get most of my music that I buy out in the wild, most of my used music anyway, from there. Definitely support your local record stores. A lot of them, though, don't carry new music or can't carry a lot of new music because it's expensive. I mean, I wouldn't buy anything on Amazon or online if I could. But anyway, check the music out. Hope you liked the show. And I hope you like the countdown. And if you like what I say, leave something in the comments section. If you think I'm an idiot, leave it in the comments section. If you have a different top 11 or want to change some things around, leave it there in the comments section. I'll use that to help create for future shows. And again, if you liked what you see, like and subscribe. I will also say my shows, if this is your first time watching me, we're not usually going past an hour. Usually I try to keep my shows shorter, about 20 to 30 minutes, so you can have more time for the rest of the day. Anyway, Happy New Year, and this was Between Two Guitars. You all have yourself a great day.